Welcome back to the channel. Today we will be assembling this RB30.
Here is the block we will be using. It is an RB30 genuine A8 turbo block. The crank will be held in by ARP main studs. Follow the instructions while installing these studs.
So here's the crank before we bolt it in. It's been grub screwed, all the little bungs knocked out, galleries cleaned out. It also has this spline drive fitted to the front. It sits proud about 1/1000, so when you tighten the pulley up it won't move. It's also like a press fit, so it won't move anyway, but some people have asked me about that, so I'll address that issue. That's on there. Runs a pump, not the two flats. It's like a better version of crank collar, I think. It's been ground. Obviously it's a standard crank. They're a good crank, they're good for good power. It's not stroked or de-stroked or anything like that, just 3 litre. So let's get this in and we'll get the rods on. We've got the crankshaft sat in the motor. Just a little bit of oil on the bearings, not assembly lube, because we are checking clearance using some plastic gauge.
With the crank clearances set, we can clean up everything and get all that plastic gauge off, and then we can final assemble this motor. I cleaned up all the bearings but ensured that they went back into their same spots. A liberal amount of assembly lube is used, and don't forget those thrust washers. I did check the thrust, so don't freak out. It is important to lube up your threads. This is also important when you're checking for bearing clearances. The bolts are torqued to ARP spec from the inside out in 3 equal steps. If you don't want to do it that way, you can always look it up on Facebook and do it wrong.
So we've gone for a JE piston on a spool rod. These are the I-beam rods that have the ARP 2000 bolt. A little bit better, they say on the website, than the H-beam rods. Nothing wrong with the H-beam rod. The reason this one had failed was not due to the rod, it was because of lack of oil. The rod definitely did not bend, it was okay. The pistons were the pistons that were inside the motor before. They survived the failure. Rods did not, and nor did the crank. The block did, because it only damaged a few of the big ends. So we'll put in these now. I'm not going to tell you exactly what clearances and everything I did, because on the internet, if I do it wrong, they get drilled. If I do it right, you get drilled. So it is what it is. It's to my spec, on which I think is correct. Due to using the sheets and a bit of research. So that's what we'll be putting in.
I use a piston to level off the rings before I gap them, and then after I've gapped them, I lay them all out in sequence on the bench. I prefer to use a ring installation tool to put the rings on. You can spin them on, but these are chromoly rings and they're a little bit brittle. It's also a good idea to ensure that they can move freely in their slots. The big end bearings are lubed up and the bolts are torqued to spec using the ARP grease provided. Here's the oil pump we'll be using. It's an N1 pump with billet gears. Here's the gears going in. They're those wavy type of gear, because they're like N1, I think they call them, something like that. It's the spline drive, obviously. They're billet. They're a bit scored up from when the engine blew up, bit of bearing with there. I can't catch my nail on it. It's just a bit of color discoloring. I'm still going to send them. Feel free to tell me how that's a bad idea, but they're going in. I pulled the back of the pump off to clean it out, change the seal, but it's got a bit of metal filing in here, so wash it all out. Check the spring because it's probably got gunk in there as well. Obviously clean it, and then we can put this back onto the motor. So we'll clean this up and go from there. So this is the pressure relief valve spring. That valve has to run smooth, which it does now. There's no crud in there anymore. I cleaned it all out. And this is the spring that controls your pressure. Some people shim these, like they put washers in here, then they wonder why they're getting crazy high oil pressure and blowing up oil filters and stuff. This one is actually a modified spring from JPC down in Victoria. They do a bunch of VLs and stuff. I'm not going to tell you what they did to it because they were a bit hesitant to tell me, but anyway, that's the spring. It goes in there. Here's your cap. Off it goes. So we'll do that now. With the bottom end done, we can unwrap the cylinder head. It's been wrapped up and stored under my house for quite a while. Here's the head. It has a slight port going on in there, just sort of a polish up. It has manly valves, also drilled out for 1/2-inch head studs. The tunnel has also been welded up as it was a little bit cracked and then it was bored out by my machine shop. And it's also been fitted with crow springs to fit a TX2 cam.
Thanks for watching this one, guys. Here's the motor, all ready to go. I'm going to bag it up now for a while until I sort out my bell housing situation for the Turbo 400. I'm not going to bolt the head on yet until I sort that out. It's a lot easier to move this around while the head is off. If you like this video, check out my old ones when we did a Cressida. We put an LS in it on nitrous. It's pretty cool, sounds good, goes fast. And I've done a few other slugs and sods, but go check out that one if you like this video. Anyway, I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.